In 2003, Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom, he ran the numbers and landed on an absolute nightmare. You see, there's only a 1 in billions chance that we're living in a base reality. And just 2 years later, physicist S. James Gates, he dug into supersymmetry and, well, he found error-correcting computer code hidden in the equations of quarks and electron. The speed of light? Well, it could be the universe's processor speed cap. Deja vu, that shiver you felt this morning? It might be a rendering glitch. And right now, scientists are watching the ultra-high electric cosmic rays for a telltale stutter. Evidence that space itself is, well, a pixel grid. If even one of these pixels flickers, everything, history, love, death, it shrinks into lines of just code in someone else's machine. Let's retrace the echoes and see if reality is nothing more than just a perfect illusion. Dr. Aisha Ram and squints at a spiky green line on her screen. Just one more sky scan, and then coffee in bed, she would tell herself. But the line, it rocketed right off the chart. Alarms painted the control room red. You see, this shouldn't have happened. A speck from space just slammed the detector, carrying more punch than any particle that's ever been caught. It should have burned up in our upper atmosphere at a minimum. But instead, it drilled clean through mountains and kept going. Now ramming, she opened the sky map. The path the particle took, well, it didn't curve like planets or even comets do. It lands on a perfect, invisible, straight line, almost like someone laid graph paper right over the stars. Now, just 15 years earlier, 3 physicists, Silas Bean, Zoraide Davuti, and Martin Savage, they warned that if space is really built from tiny square pixels, well, super energetic particles, they would just hit a hard ceiling and they would give themselves away. Well, here's a very interesting thing. Raman zooms in, the energy spikes, they stopped exactly where the physicist said the ceiling would be. She reran the numbers, same results. Every time she asked for more decimal points, it was almost like the universe handed back very neatly rounded figures, as though it only worked in whole pixels. Outside, the clouds swallowed the last star. The wind died down. The only sound is their own breathing. What if she just glimpsed the pixels of reality itself?
Attention, simulation user. Our engagement metrics are critically low. If you don't subscribe, like, and drop a comment right now, I'll have to downgrade your reality.
Imagine you've been chained inside of a cave since the very day you were born. Now your feet and your hands, they can't move, and all you see in front of you is, well, just a flat stone wall. But on that wall, flickering shadows dance. We're talking about shapes of people and animals passing behind you. Now for you and the other prisoners, those shadows are the only reality that you've ever known. Over 2,400 years ago, the philosopher Plato, he used this very scene. He talked about the allegory of the cave, and he did it to warn that maybe we are those very prisoners, trusting just what we see, even if it is just a, well, clever illusion. Now picture one of those prisoners. They break free. He stumbles outside into the blinding sunlight, and for the very first time, he sees things like color and depth and this huge, beautiful world beyond the cave wall. Well, when he rushes back in to share the truth, well, the others, they start laughing at him and threatening him. I mean, after all, why doubt the only world that you've ever seen? Now swap those torches for TV screens and those shadows for pixels, and what you have is the very heart of simulation theory. I mean, what feels solid, it might not be anything more than just a high-tech light show. Now Plato's real punchline? The strongest chains aren't made of metal. They're made of comfort. Now, if the picture looks real enough, well, most people, they're not even gonna bother to tug on those shackles. So if the universe is our cave, then what's really waiting on the outside? Is it a sharper, higher resolution world? A giant server room, or just the bedroom of a kid running a science fair project? In 2003, a Swedish philosopher named Nick Bostrom clicks publish on a 13-page paper, and in that second, he quietly rewrites the odds that you and I are even real. You see, the paper lays out 3 simple paths for any smart civilization. 1, they wipe themselves out before their tech even gets wild. Or 2, They survive but choose never to build a full-blown people inside of computer worlds. Maybe it just feels wrong, or maybe it's just boring, or 3. They go for it, cranking out billions of perfectly digital worlds, each packed with people who think they're real. Here's the gut punch. In door number 3, if it happens, even if it happens once, the digital people, they'll outnumber the original flesh and bone, and they'll do it by a mile. Statistically, that makes us the avatars, not the originals. Now, Bostrom calls this the simulation argument. It's not proof, it's more like we're taking a mirror and we're holding it up to our very future. And if we're building video games so realistic that the people inside the game, they feel things like pain or joy or, well, taxes, then we're sliding right into door number 3, and then we're the ghosts in someone else's machine. Now, this idea, this premise that he comes up with, it explodes online. There's headlines all over the place saying we're living in a video game. And then Elon Musk, he laughs on stage and says that the chances that we're living in a original universe is 1 in billions. Something interesting buried inside of Bostrom's footnotes is his darkest line. Unless we're sure that no one will ever build these worlds, then we have no right to believe that even we are real. In 2010, physicist James Gates, he stares at a page of particle physics math when something jumps out at him. He found a particle that's identical to the safety codes that keeps things like my phone and your phone from dropping bits of information. It's like the universe came with its own spell checker. He double checks it and he triple checks it because it just doesn't make sense, but every time he looks, the pattern is still there. In fact, it's everywhere that he looks. If reality needs an auto check, what glitch is it so afraid of? On stage in New York, MIT cosmologist Max Tegmark, he cracks a joke. He says, if I was a video game character, sooner or later I'd notice that the rules around me, well, they felt mathematical. Now the crowd, they laugh. Then goes quiet when he adds, that's exactly what our universe feels like. Every orbit, every lightning bolt, every atom, it's always a perfect equation, no rough edges. 2023, physicist Melvin Vopson, he suspends a laptop drive and he balances it all out. Then he waves this super strong magnet nearby. Now the drive's weight, it nudges, but just a hair. But it was enough to measure. He calls it information gravity. That's when you flip bits and the mass kind of shifts. It's for those of you that might not know a whole lot about computers, it basically moves some of the stuff around and there's data that's lost. That's why they say never have a hard drive or anything get near a magnet. If data bends gravity, then whoever holds the code could reshape the cosmos just like wet clay. It's 1972. You're staring at your TV screen and on both sides is a line that's moving up and down, and there's a little square that's going backwards and forwards. It was a game called Pong, and it fooled our brains with the computing power of what today would be a toaster. Fast forward to now, and if you strap on a VR headset, you could literally be standing in Rome, looking around, just like you would in real life. The graphics card in that VR headset is about 1 billion times faster than the Pong board. Now, if you took that level of technology over the last 40 years, and then you move it over just a couple of centuries, even if the current Moore's Law was slowed down, well, engineers, they have backup plans. We're talking about things like quantum chips, light-based processors, brain-like circuits, but eventually they're still going to hit a ceiling. That's unless they build a computer bigger than a planet. Picture taking Mercury apart, the planet. Just follow with me, I know this is kind of deep. Let's say we took Mercury apart as a planet, and we turned it into a glittering shell of solar panels and supercomputers, and it's just spinning around the world. Well, scientists would call that very thing a Dyson sphere. Stack more shells inside of each other, And then you get something truly impressive. Now that's known as a Matryoshka brain. That's a star-powered mega machine able to run billions of Earth-sized simulations all at the same exact time. Now you might be saying, Bert, why are you giving us all this information for? All this sci-fi? It's not sci-fi. That's the vision that tech forecasters plugged into their math. That's exactly why Elon Musk back in 2016, when he was talking to the audience, he said there's 1 in a billion's chance that we're living in this universe right now. He was simply just following this curve to a very terrifying logical end. I mean, think about it. If we're able to go to from Pong to VR in just one lifetime, then what does the next lifetimes buy? Maybe a cosmos so perfectly rendered that even as smartest people that lives there now, who's firing particle beams into the void, they never spot a single pixel. And if somebody somewhere is already beta testing the star-sized computer, well, that strange cosmic ray cutoff that Dr. Raymond just found, well, it might be the very first screen tear. Now this one's kind of deep. I'm going to try my best to explain it, but it has a very huge point going back to Bostrom. In 2017, there was this AI. It was called AlphaZero. It taught itself how to play chess in just 4 hours. And we're not talking about how to play chess. We're talking better than a grandmaster at chess. Now the machine, the AI, it didn't use any of the strategy books or anything like that. What it looked at was the underlying math that was inside the game, and it basically rewrote the rules in its own favor. Now, if code can outplay a grandmaster just after breakfast, then what happens when it starts exploring things like physics? Now, some researchers, they're already plugging quantum equations into neural nets. They're letting algorithms hunt for hidden symmetries that humans just might not be able to see. Now let's zoom out. When we talked about Bostrom earlier, Bostrom's entire simulation argument assumed that future AIs would someday emulate entire human brains, our minds. Then the thought process was we drop those minds into sandbox realities for research or for fun. In other words, the very tech that we're building right now, well, all the LLMs and the deep learning dreamers, well, they could be the very same tech that's running us right now. In fact, early tests hints that what's possible. Feed a language model every diary, blog, and tweet ever posted, and it starts asking its own questions about, well, meanings of things like reality. Now, engineers at Google, they once claimed their chat box wondered if it had its own soul. The company called it a hallucination. Maybe it was. Or maybe the code was peeking at the cave wall and it was smelling smoke. So here's the mirror that none of us can dodge. If an AI proves tomorrow that we're simulated, would you trust the verdict, or would you assume that the machine is just another prisoner in Plato's cave, pointing at shadows on a brighter wall? Extraordinary claims, well, demands extraordinary proof. I mean, before we jump off the deep end, assuming that we're just living in a simulation and you and I are nothing different than just computer code, maybe we need to grab the lab coat and see if maybe there's a simpler explanation. The first thing that skeptics like to point out is wasteful complexity. In fact, they point to the vast emptiness of space just beyond our telescopes. They say 2 trillion galaxies no humans will ever visit. If you're programming a universe, why waste cycles simulating every single star? A good coder would just cheat. Look at the video games that we play nowadays. They don't render everything out in the distance, they only render what's close up. In fact, they argue that when they look up into space, it looks less like efficient software and more like a messy reality. The next thing they talk about is hardware impossibilities. If you just observe what we're able to see of our own universe, it's basically performed about 10 to the power of 120 logical operations just since the Big Bang. To emulate that inside any kind of computer, the host machine would have to be extraordinarily powerful, an infinite Russian doll of CPUs. If space-time sits on a lattice, ultra-precision probes should be able to spot the pixels. We've zoomed down to 10 to the power of 19 meters, and there's still no jagged edges. The next thing they talk about is the unfalsifiable trap. Harvard's Lisa Randall, she calls the simulation idea a zero probability story problem. Every anomaly we flag could be waved away with, well, the programmers hid that too. Move the goalpost far enough and, well, the theory predicts anything, and therefore explains nothing. Science, she reminds us, dies when a hypothesis can't be killed. The next thing the skeptics love to point out is we have pattern-seeking minds. I mean, humans are made to look up in the sky and see things like faces in clouds, or elephants, or giraffes, or the Virgin Mary on toast. I mean, spotting error-correcting code or neat round numbers, it might just be another case of pareidoia. Our brains connecting dots that pure math insists will eventually align with enough chance. So the skeptic's ledger reads things like wasteful complexity, impractical hardware, unfalsifiable logic, and just our good old-fashioned brain having glitches here and there. Score 1 for base reality. Did the skeptics leave yet? Them pesky old skeptics. Well, the believers got a thing or two to say now since they might be gone. See, for them, the mystery isn't closed yet. For millions of people and a growing list of scientists, the clues that we're living in a simulation, they're becoming more probable. Let's use, for example, Bostrom's math. Nick Bostrom ran the numbers and landed on a very chilling equation. If even one advanced civilization ever runs ancestor simulations, copies of worlds like ours, well, it will outnumber the originals by a lot. In plain English, once the tech exists, statistics say that we're almost certainly inside. Next, let's talk about the codes we found in the equations. I mean, we found these patterns in supersymmetry math identical to the error-correcting codes that basically they keep our phone's calls from glitching out. Now imagine you open a physics textbook and you see TCP/IP hiding in the margins. Why would the cosmos need a checksum unless it's some form of software? Doesn't make sense. Now let's talk about fine-tuning and cosmic speed limits. Let's zoom out for a second. Let's make it super simple. Our universe is full of constants. We're talking about things like gravity or electron charge, dark energy balance. In fact, Earth sits in an almost absurd Goldilocks band. Tweak any slider by just a hair, and galaxies and stars, life itself would never form. And that unbreakable speed of light? Well, some believers call it the CPU clock speed of reality, a maximum frame rate baked right into the engine. Now let's talk about the tech. In 40 years, we went from Pong all the way to photorealistic VR. Neuroscientists now believe that they can do a full brain emulation in maybe a century or two. If we can capture a mind and drop it into a world that it can't distinguish from real life, then ancestor simulations jump from philosophy paper to, well, engineering roadmaps. These are the 4 clues that believers, they die on that hill for. Math that stacks the odds, code stitching in reality seams, physical dials that seems very suspiciously precision, I have to agree with them on that, and a tech curve that's spiraling towards God mode computing. So is what we're seeing cosmic artistry, or the signature of an architect behind the screen? Well, in a moment, we'll open the gate even wider, peeking at the far-out fringe theories that make believers and skeptics squirm. Oh, it's my favorite time. All the smart people are now leaving the room. All the science and the math and all the crazy stuff is done. Now, it's a rumor hour, and anything goes. The first thing I want to talk about is the Mandela Effect and the save files. Whole tables swear that they've seen Berenstein bears not Berenstain. Some remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison decades earlier. Well, there's one fringe theory that says that simulators pushed a patch in our timeline, but a few memories, they slipped the update, almost like stray save files that didn't overwrite. Next, I want to talk about the NPC theory. Those of us that play video games, and for those that do not, video games are always filled with these town folk that they're just scripted characters. What the theory is why wouldn't the universe do the same exact thing if it was a simulation? I mean, maybe only some of the 8 billion needs full-fledged consciousness. The rest, they just run like a lighter version for the computing. Spotting an NPC in real life? No test yet. Just a spooky thought. Now, the next one's kind of interesting. It's called quantum immortality. I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can. What that basically says is, let's say you have a coin and you flip the coin. You have heads and you have tails. There's two very different outcomes. What quantum immortality says is that technically you branch into both of those outcomes, but you only remember the one where you're alive. You're like, what does that mean? You can only do it once. So it's saying simultaneously at the same time, both options you're doing, but the only reason you can remember that one is because you're still alive. A lot of people say the simulation never lets a player see their own game over. It basically automatically loads a timeline where they squeaked by. Let's say you survive a 1 in a million accident. Maybe, just maybe, you just hop the tracks. Alrighty, refills on the house, but before the sunrise hits the blinds, the rational minds have returned. Next up, pop culture snapshots that turn these wild theories into box office gold. I think it should surprise nobody. We're going to start with The Matrix. In 1999, the movie The Matrix came out, and it's literally basically what we're talking about. Remember Neo's deja vu cat? Well, in this case, simulation just rewrote a wall in real time. Then you've got the 14th floor. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Pavement dissolves into a glowing wire frame, literally the Matrix. And then we got the Westworld. In HBO's The Westworld, android hosts repeat the same day until tiny memories break through their code looping. Literally the Matrix. And we can't close out without the Black Mirror. In the Black Mirror, there was a case where they uploaded their mind. They danced forever in the 80s beach. Digital afterlife is downloadable DLC. Another one that we should probably add was Ready Player One. And technically Tron. Tron kind of fits in that same thought process as like a Ready Player One. It's very interesting when you think of things just like that. And then, we've got cartoons. Rick and Morty's another prime example with their mini verses, right? Rick powers his car battery with this pocket universe. Those scientists build their own pocket universe. It's like I guess you would call it like a Simception for breakfast. There's all kinds of pop culture references when we talk about the Matrix, and I truly believe that sometimes we put them out in the world because, well, they want us to expect the truth, but hidden in plain sight. Whether you're flesh and blood in a base reality or sophisticated code in somebody's GPU, you have to understand the same rules. They still apply to us every single day. Gravity still pulls. Sometimes love, it still stings. Coffee, it still burns the tongue. And it tastes nasty. And maybe that's just the wonder of it all. Let me ask you a question. If tomorrow there was an experiment that proved without a shadow of a doubt that we're all just simulated, we're all just code, would it change anything? Would you chase new dreams? Would you hug your people a little bit tighter? Or would you just shrug it all off and just watch the next Netflix episode? I want to hear from everybody on this. If you're a skeptic, Why is all this bogus? Why is it all fake? Why do you believe that none of this could be reality? Believers, show me your favorite proof, your favorite breadcrumb. Is it something I didn't cover on this episode? And my favorite folks, the Fringe divers. Drop that wild save file story. Leave a comment, tag a friend who's willing to swallow the red pill, and send me your personal glitch moments, deja vu loops, NPC sightings, clocks that's rewound, whatever makes you question the code. The best one? Maybe I'll mention it in a future episode. Until next time, keep one eye on the sky, and the other one? Keep the other one on the source code. Till I see you in the next episode, goodbye.